you're up in the room and you have dirty bed sheets, you don't excuse it because you're like, oh, well, downstairs on the reception desk there was a little gold plaque that said they had the best toast in 2006. So really, awards are just a load of nonsense. But award ceremonies, they also encourage people to, be pretentious and self-congratulatory. But we don't really need any encouragement in that area. So I guess that's probably why they shared that around. So I'll just end with a quote from Jerry Seinfeld, if I've said that right. When he received an award for stand-up comedy in 2007, he said, "Awards are stupid. There being no further business to be here."
Are there any objections to me signing these minutes as a true and accurate record of the last private business meeting? There being none, as duly signed. Mr. Treasurer, are there any fines?
There are no fines.
Mr. Secretary, are there any reports to be read?
There are no reports to be read.
Mr. Secretary, are there any motions on notice?
There is one motion on notice.
Ooh. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we are on-memming two of the people in the audience tonight. So they're ex-officers of the film, and well, we might be on-memming them, I guess we should say. So the way it's going to work now is I'm going to ask Suzanne Lynch and Desmond Jennings to leave the chamber in a minute. And what we're going to do is I'm going to propose that they be made honorary members. We're going to hear a little word from one of their guests that's with them, and then basically it's like I'll propose it, someone will second it, any of you in the audience, and then we're going to clap and they're on it. Okay, so it's not real vote, so you can say whatever you like because I'm going to get ahead of it. So I'm going to ask now for Suzanne and Desmond to just leave the chamber. Don't worry, I'll call you back in. So now I'm going to propose that Suzanne Lynch, the steward of the 307 session,
there before my exams at this end of college, which I rarely visited. So I'm here now to tell you a bit about Dennis. First of all, I'll tell you about what he wants you to know about him. He's really nice. He's really, really upset if he doesn't become a man, and he'll be insufferable to live with. So please, I would highly recommend it. In addition to that, what else can I say about him? He studied psychology and economics here, went off and worked in the City of London for nearly 20 years, and is now working as a psychotherapist here in Dublin. So if any of you want any psychotherapy, I could highly recommend it. I don't think it advertised here, but anyhow. So the things that maybe he also, while he was here, he won some sort of medal, I don't know the name of it is, for reading a paper. That may have been the Irish Times inside, I'm not too sure, but he read a paper, everyone liked it, you know, big deal. And finally, the story that maybe he said is kind of a bit of a dark day in the film. When he was, I'm not too sure, he was on the council at that stage, he, as the council did, entertained the guests, the kind of guests that came to address the film. And this person, many of you young people may not remember, was a guy called Oliver Reed. Oliver Reed was a hellraiser, he was a womanizer, he was a drinker, and a general lad around town was a bit of a bowsy, okay? Also quite a famous actor, by the way. So Des, who, if he sniffs a cork, falls over, had to look after him with aggression and supply him with drink for the whole evening in advance of his... At the end of it all, I gather Oliver Reed gave a rather incoherent speech to the world, had women falling all over the place. Meanwhile, Des was in hospital. So he's taken one for the team, guys, so I think it's about time, kind of payback time. He's terribly traumatised, so this would make it all right. So thank you for your attention.
Great, thank you so much. So, propose that we make honorary members of Suzanne Lynch and Des Jennings propose to your Knox-in register. Great, so we're going to
Mr. Secretary, are there any motions not on the list?
There are no motions not on the list.
Question for you, Mr. President. However, hearing from page of the Irish Times representing the society extremely well and getting extremely positive coverage for the society, people who don't even know you, seeing you there representing the film, waiting on for important people like Martin Scorsese, would you rather receive a piece of gold-plated medal from the CSC?
This brings us on to general business of the society. Are there any motions to be raised for general business?
Privileged motion number 5, that the chair do leave the chair and that Sheila Naughton, honorary registrar, do take the chair. Proposed, Mark Finn, MC.
second Marion Institute.
Are there any other motions? I have one announcement to make on behalf of the Electoral Oversight Committee, is that nominations for positions in the 333rd session of the University Philosophical Society will open this coming Monday the 13th of March, and they will close on Monday the 20th of March, and there'll be more information posted about that on our Facebook page and in our email. We'll put up a sign as well. So I think it's 1 p.m. but we'll let you know the definite time maybe in the evening or by tomorrow. Is there any other business? No? So with there being no further business, I'm now going to ask our Secretary Mike to retire and return shortly with our guests for the debate.
disgraceful attempt to enlist sympathy for his cause. Do not believe a word. What? Are you going to do that again? So try and keep it down as much as you can. I find it very upsetting. It's nothing to do with my bladder. That's perfectly all right. Anyhow, I was about to tell you that Brian McAvoy was not to be trusted. I mean, he has for many years gulled the British nation into thinking that he is a respectable and supporting cast. I can't say very much about them because I think they're far too pretty for rubbish. So on that note, I think I'd better say something which contributes to your understanding of what the motion is. You see, it's all very well to say that the purpose of comedy is to produce laughter, or the sole purpose is, and it really is, but it's what gets done to it afterwards is the problem. It's the perversion of the laughter. Laughter is used as a sort of thing to numb people's senses so that they are with you because you make them laugh. They think that what you're going to say is sensible. You'll see this when Brian is talking. For instance, there's all this sort of things of kind of, how would I put it, trying to get you to understand a particular thing which they believe in by making you laugh. I think probably the best exponents of that are the current Irish government, who are so laughable that you would almost believe them. It's difficult really to catalogue the number of things which people believe are comedy, which they are not. PC is not comedy, satire is not comedy. All these things are used to make people think that they should believe in what you're peddling. And unfortunately, people are not that stupid. There are many examples of humour and comedy being used to further causes. A certain Mr. Hitler was very good at it. So was his running mate, Mr. Goebbels. They believed that if you said something often enough, people would laugh at it and do it. Well, we laughed. Now, what I would like to say to you is that you should not be seduced by the people who use humour to follow what they're doing. The fact that they make you laugh is one thing, but do not let them use your laughter in order to do something which is quite unacceptable. I'm being very serious here because you need seriousness, because the rubbish you're going to hear shortly. I don't want to be antagonistic. It doesn't hurt. Well, if it's not hurting, I should continue. Good. I'm not quite sure how long I'm supposed to speak, but I think I've made my main points. I would like to say that some of the people who are supporting me are probably far more intelligent than I am, and certainly not quite as old. Your chairperson said about that it should be hip, hip, hooray. In my case, it's knee, hooray, because I've got a replacement knee. I'm that old. Thank you very much for the opportunity of talking to you. It's a long time, as I say, 55 years is a long time. I used to sit in that chair, but I'm not let anymore. Thank you very much.
I'd like to thank Chris for his fine words, and I also forgot to mention before the start that there's going to be an opportunity for floor speeches at the end of 3 minutes, 2 on each side of the debate. So if at any point you feel like you would like to do a
waving them. So I'm going to deliver exactly the load of rubbish that Chris tells you to expect within my speech today. Firstly, by asking, what is comedy? The proposition may tell you today that comedy is entertainment that's designed to make us laugh. And that's something that I agree with completely. However, the point where I disagree with them is when they tell us that laughter is the sole purpose of comedy. I think comedy can entertain, comedy can educate. Comedy has the power to reaffirm or challenge our biases and expose the norms of society. Chris says that comedy is used to push ideals and further causes. I say yes, this is the case, and that's exactly how laughter cannot be the sole purpose of comedy on our side of the house today. So I think that the way that comedians do make you laugh is by educating, by challenging, by exposing norms. Laughter is just a sure byproduct of this. Think back to things that made you laugh when you were a child, like particularly the kinds of inane humor, like when people would say the word sex when you were 12, and you would absolutely be scandalized and shocked, and you would all go into fits of absolute giggles, right? That seems like the least intelligent kind of humor that you can imagine. But when you think about why that makes us laugh, it makes us laugh specifically because we live in a society that tells us we don't talk about sex, especially when we're 12, right? And so it's just so hilarious that you would even say the word sex. Why would you say that? That's so funny. And we all laugh. And that in itself exposes something about our society. And so even the most inane of humor can surely be said to have another purpose than laughter. Right, so they'll tell you that the purpose of laughter is entertainment. And I don't really think I need to prove this, but I have two hilarious jokes that I heard today, so of course I'm going to try anyway. So, what did one cannibal say to the other while they were eating a clown? Does this taste funny to you? I know, it's really, really bad. The next one's not much better. So, the guy goes to his doctor, right, and he says, I've got a problem. I can't stop singing What's New, Pussycat. And the doctor says, oh dear, you've got like Tom Jones-itis. And the guy says, oh my God, is that rare? And the doctor says, well, it's not unusual. So I think clear proof that comedy can be used to entertain. But now on to kind of the more slightly serious stuff. I know it's a bit boring, but how can it educate? So I think specifically, like, we hear that like satire is not comedy. I completely disagree, because at the point where you say that comedy is entertainment that's designed to make us laugh, you have to include satire within that, because it is designed to make us laugh. So I think that when we talk about this, we're talking about like SNL, Late Night with John Oliver, Mock the Week. For all of you old folks in the room, those are just TV shows where people say funny things about current affairs. So like, news can be time consuming, it can be inaccessible, it can use complex language, and often it requires you having some knowledge of what's already going on with a situation, right? But where comedy differentiates from this, and where comedy actually succeeds in like having this purpose that is education, is where comedy is accessible, right? It's where comedy, like things like SNL, things like skits, things like sketches, they're full of snappy, bite-sized bits that you can get on the go, right? I will always be more likely to watch SNL than to read the Washington Post. That's just true. Comedy engages us in a way that news often fails to, because it's fun, it's entertainment, and it's accessible. And whether it succeeds or fails in like educating people to the standard that you think it should, it still definitely occupies this role, right? It still definitely tries to inform us about what's going on in the world, and tries to get us engaged civically to some extent, right? But on to kind of the more weird stuff in this debate, like reaffirming biases. Again, the kind of things that we've heard about how comedy can be used to push ideals. So to see how this works, like look at the comedy that you might have heard in the past. Look at the comedy that might have been funny in the past. Racist jokes, sexist jokes. Look at jokes even in recent years about like women in the kitchen making sandwiches, something that I mean, even I laughed at in 2012, which is pretty shocking. These are only jokes because they make you laugh, and yeah, they're meant to, but they also trivialize issues, because when you're willing to laugh at jokes that are sexist or that are racist in a way that entrenches these things, you say that they're not issues, you say that we don't care about them, you say that they're not important, you say that they're things that we can laugh at. And like, at the point where there are like racist or sexist people in the world who are willing to make these kinds of jokes, and at the point where people laugh at them, it is absolutely a purpose of comedy to reaffirm these biases. Whether you think that's good or not, arguably, I don't think it is good. But I think that that's a specific type of comedy, and I think that comedy can also be used for good. So here's how comedy can be used for good, how comedy can save the world. Go for it.
Why do pirates not know the alphabet?
Tell me, go on.
They always get stuck at sea.
Good one. Good one. And see, I learned something about pirates and their conception of the alphabet through that, and so I was educated. It was great. So comedy's power to challenge biases, right? So think specifically of like satire. Think of when you see like Donald Trump being mocked for building a wall, right? And for talking about this. And generally for a lot of like his policies that we think are outlandish. And where at the same time, the sort of like comedy and satire that we see around Hillary Clinton is all about how she wears pantsuits and, you know, is a little bit uptight, right? When you make caricatures of these candidates to that extent, where the most we can get out of Hillary is that she's an uptight woman, and what you can get out of Donald Trump is that he thinks everything's huge and he wants to build a wall, right? I think you see the biases which are implicit in society. You see the things that we don't necessarily talk about. You see the fact that men do have this privilege, that they can get away with things that women can't. And then I think we get a little bit closer to asking the question, why? Why do we let men get away with being like racist when we're unwilling to accept women for the way that they dress in politics? And I think that comedy really does help us to challenge these things, because at the point where you draw them out to these extremes, they're so much clearer for people to see. And I think certainly I know that like shows like SNL, for one, have helped a lot of my friends to see what was actually going on, like politically, and then help them to kind of define their own stances on those issues. So I guess what I'm saying is that like, not all comedy just makes us laugh. In fact, I don't think that any comedy just makes us laugh. I think it's always pointing at something larger. And often when you think something was just funny, it's likely funny for other reasons. It's funny because of the society we live in. It's funny because it says something absurd in this society where we're not willing to accept those things that are so absurd. Like even the most inane of jokes, like your friend saying penis to you in a game of Chinese whispers when you're 14, right? If I say this, I could make a room of 15-year-old boys laugh like crazy. Like, why is that the case, right? It's because it's absurd relative to society. So I guess not all comedy does all of these things, but all we have to prove on our side is that comedy can and does have other purposes than laughter. And at the point at which any piece of comedy ever in your life has ever made you like more aware politically, or has ever made you think that's a bit funny, I think you have to say that laughter is not the sole purpose of comedy. Thank you very much.
So Catherine tried to ruin Ricky's joke and make it about education, and basically proved why on side opposition, when they tried to make comedy about things that isn't just laughter, they kind of ruined the joke, and that why we should really preserve the fact that it's just about laughter, because when you try and make it about other values, you're basically destroying the joke, because you're trying to give it some deeper meaning. So basically, opposition are having this kind of existential crisis whereby if something doesn't have like a deeper meaning, a kind of a universal function, then it has no real value. What we tell you on side proposition is that the fact that it has no real purpose other than to laugh is actually a good thing in itself. It makes it a separate genre, and this should be protected. So side opposition tells you that the role of comedy is to educate and to like point out societal norms, and we tell you this is absolute rubbish. We say that when someone makes fun of Donald Trump's orange face or his like flimsy hair, or they're not trying to educate anyone. Or when Tommy Tiernan starts screaming about like the immersion, he's not trying to like alert you to the fact that your mother has a like problem with her temper. And when Chandler makes a joke about like his, the lack of sex in his life, he's trying to make you laugh because you kind of relate to that. He's not trying to make you feel better. He's just trying to make you laugh by using something that you relate to, unfortunately. So the thing about comedy is that it comes in so many different forms, but they all have one thing in common. They're all designed to try and make you laugh. And they do this by appealing to different experiences. And that's where kind of opposition gets confused, and they confuse the way comedy goes about doing things with their actual purpose. So I'm going to bring to you two main ideas today. One, that comedy's sole purpose is to make you laugh, and anything that it achieves, like enlightenment, is just a byproduct of that, and that's a good thing, but its main aim is to make you laugh. Second idea is that its sole purpose, the fact that laughter is its sole purpose does not undermine its value. In fact, it probably makes it more valuable and more necessary in society. So, you know the feeling when you're in a room, a crowded room, and you're trying to tell a funny story, and then suddenly everyone goes quiet and everyone's listening to you, and you feel a massive pressure to make sure those people laugh, or you know that basically nobody's ever going to want to talk to you again. That's basically what doing a chamber speech is like, by the way. But at that point, you're so desperate to make people laugh, to get that kind of approval, you're going to use any means to do that. Because if people just wanted to hear about like a story about an awkward personal encounter that's not funny, they're probably just going to go and watch Fair City or something like that, and that kind of evokes pity as opposed to laughter. So the thing about comedy is that it comes in so many different forms that it's easy to mistake the means that it does, that it achieves laughter with, like the actual thing that I already said that. So it's easy to say that, oh, political comedy makes you think about politics. Like, okay, well done, but what's that actually trying to achieve? And where does that leave slapstick comedy, which doesn't seem to try and achieve that same goal? If we're going to talk about comedy as a genre, then we have to take into consideration all the different kind of subgenres that these all have in common. This is kind of mathsy now. So the common denominator is that they all make you laugh. The variable is how they do this. That's about enough, about as much maths as I know. So while political commentary does kind of make you think about political comedy does make you think about politics. I thought about this so hard that it gave me a headache, so you're probably going to get that. It provides you with political commentary and critique, but what we say is the fact that so basically political comedy uses politics because it's kind of this common factor that we all have. We're all stakeholders and we're all very familiar with the content, and that's why they use politics, because it's kind of a way, something that we all know about, and it's kind of, they can appeal to the widest audience possible. So what they're doing is they're not really trying to spread a political message. They might be, but you know, their sole aim is to make people laugh, and they do that by using politics and making people think about politics. That's kind of a byproduct. So if you are tempted to like cause a political uprising as a result of that, that's not really what they're intending to do, but like, cool, go ahead. So we're not being educated, because if political comedians wanted to educate us, they would talk about issues that we're not actually aware of. They would want to draw attention to things that we haven't noticed and issues that we haven't picked up on. But that's not funny, and that doesn't make a comedy. So basically that's just political commentary, and we already have that. And that's why comedy is a completely different genre, because what it does is it takes these issues and makes you laugh about them. So their sole purpose is actually to make you laugh by using these means, not actually to try and get you to think about it in the first place. Otherwise, you know, it wouldn't be funny because you wouldn't relate to it. And that's why they use like very relatable content. Now, so that's enough about politics. What about other forms of comedy? So these operate under a similar principle. They want to use this kind of common experience that we all have, so we can all relate to, so it can appeal to like the biggest audience possible. Can you tell how much I thought about this? So basically, slapstick comedy doesn't seem to send out any real message. It kind of appeals to the fact that we're all human beings, we're all possible, you know, it's possible that we'll all feel pain, and we feel relief when we're not the one being hit in the head with a frying pan. So that's why that makes us laugh. It doesn't have any message, it just makes us laugh, and it's still part of the comedic genre. Sitcoms appeal to the fact that each character has a personal life which may mirror our own, and therefore, you know, we sympathize or mock a character. So they don't try and make you feel better about it, they just try and, you know, appeal to the fact that you know about that to make you laugh. And then dark or black humor simply uses the fact that you're too embarrassed and don't have the balls to say the kind of stuff that they do say. So you laugh because, you know, you're saying, oh, well, someone's saying it. I'm not the only crazy one here who like has really dark thoughts at night. So basically, comedy's been around for thousands of years, and whether Freud is right in its appeal to a subconscious, or whether like the opposition is right in saying like, oh, it's got this political agenda, we're saying the fact that comedy's sole purpose is to make you laugh is a good thing, and this should be preserved because this sets it apart from other things, and it basically is relief to us that we're not, it's like a rest from how mundane and serious our lives are, and you just kind of get to think about crazy stuff for a while and just have a laugh. And we think this is really important and this should be preserved. So with opposition trying to push this kind of agenda on us and saying that no, it must have a purpose, it must try to do something, then basically they're ruining comedy. Nobody's going to find your jokes funny if you try and give them some kind of deeper meaning. So therefore, we say that the sole purpose of comedy is laughter, and that's actually a good thing. So on those points, we beg you to propose. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Irene. I'm now going to call on Brian McAvoy to continue the case for the opposition.
He was hoping he wouldn't have to stand. Uachtarán, Dina Ursel, Agus Corja. That's the end of that. At least the Queen got away with it. But here I am. Just to finish off the cannibal one, the same cannibals were having lunch the next day, only this time it was a missionary. And one says to the other, "What do you think of that then?" And the first one says, "Not a lot. Never mind, just eat the chips." See, it's not funny. And just to get the politics out of the way, I bet Walt Disney never dreamt of the fact that one day Donald and Mickey would be running the country. Boom. And they get worse. I haven't spoken to my mother-in-law for 18 months. I hate to interrupt. So what's all that got to do with anything other than making people laugh? Hopefully, whichever side of the debate we find ourselves, that, yeah, you can still have a laugh. And 7 minutes isn't very long. 55 years ago, as my enlightened friend here reminds us, I was here too. Pontius was a pilot. And he just spent time in the Air Force trying to break one of Her Majesty's very expensive jets, at which point she said, "No, go somewhere else." So he turned up here and read economics. Been breaking other people's jets ever since. But why do we laugh at hard and difficult situations? We do it because it's funny. It's as simple as that. It's impossible to explain. Why do you fall in love with someone? You don't know. You can do all the chemistry stuff and the psychology and all the rest of it, and it all kind of leads you somewhere, but you never quite get there. I keep getting reminded of, at one stage I taught in a school in England, a very nice school. I was knackered at the end of 5 years, so I retired. But we had to look at things like creation. And in creation, inevitably, you ended up bumping into the Big Bang. Oh yeah, that's the answer to everything. It's all happened. It's the Big Bang. Science knows it all. At which point, I would say, yes, but let's have another look at that. And inevitably, some of the clever youngsters would come up with and say, yeah, I see what you mean. If there was a bang, something must have gone bang. So we're still left poking around in the dark, trying to find our way and to explain what's been going on. But comedy, whatever you say about it making you laugh, and I can do that very simply just by cracking a few small jokes, and depending on how much booze you've had, you'll find it funnier or not, and it doesn't really matter much. But there is another purpose. Wearing this thing for the last 53 years, I learned my theology here in Trinity at the time when the Church of Ireland particularly had the courage to remain an integrated part of the university. Our divinity school was right here in the thick of it all, and our mates and friends were engineers, medics, and the two groups of people who were most feared by the girls was the boat club and the divinity students. So we made quite sure that that reputation remained firm, but we were very good about it. We didn't tell anybody about anything. We learned about the secrets of the confessional at a very early stage. But going on Going on from there, I arrived in the military. I did 27 years as a chaplain in the Royal Air Force, and that kind of knocks the corners off you. I still have that butterfly feeling standing up here in front of you that I did 55 years ago. But there was a motto in the Air Force which I think applies to all of us. If you can't take a joke, you shouldn't have joined. And that was what comes up on the worst of days. And the joke has a purpose beyond making you laugh. Winston Churchill, amongst many other things, when he was the commander of a regiment in his young days, he instructed his troops that they should learn how to laugh in the face of war. Now, the time I was in the military, nobody tried to kill me. Going back to 1961 here, we were all terribly affected and worried about the Cuban crisis. I remember it vividly, the evening press posters down O'Connell Street, war is coming, we're all going to die, and yes, the whole of the world as we know it could end. And we really firmly believed it. So much so we went on a march up to Leinster House. We said, enough of this, we're going to make ourselves known. And it was a hot summer's day, and like the Egypt I am, it took me a very long time to work out why the guards were all wearing their winter greatcoats and gloves. Only to discover that, of course, it meant that if any of us went for them, they wouldn't feel it. And if they went for us with the gloves on, it wouldn't show. But it was a tough old time. The thing we faced was the elimination of the human race. So we all had a bit of a laugh about it's the only thing to do. What are you going to do? But there was an interesting incident towards the end of all that era, which I would like to share with you. When I was a student here, I used to did a number of jobs in the summer. I was a conductor on the trams in Blackpool. I picked and cleaned sheep fleeces for John M. Joyce, a wool merchant here in Dublin. But the best job I had was as a traffic clerk with Aer Lingus. And I was on duty at Dublin Airport when the lovely, wonderful son of Ireland, John F. Kennedy, came to visit. And I drew a nice short straw and got a place on top of a set of aircraft steps and saw the whole thing unfold in front of me. I had a camera with a new film in it, which was beautifully placed on my bed in my room in the Rubrics. Funny old thing. But Kennedy went on through that summer and ended up in Berlin. When he made that famous speech, he was a real orator in many ways. Ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. Still rings true, and led him into what I think is one of the great orators of our time. And I mean ours, as much as yours. But he stood up in Berlin and announced that he was a Berliner. Now, you've all heard this thing. And if any of you know Berlin, you will know that Berliners have a tremendous sense of humor. You know, they love a joke. And I have to finish at that, but I will say that the joke about being a jam donut, which is what he really said, he didn't know that, but with his Boston accent, the jam donut joke made the world a safer place. So it's more than just making you laugh. Thank you.
I'd like to thank Brian for his fine words, and I'd also like to encourage a floor speech from someone who would be on the prop. You can get up and tell jokes, so I don't mind, but it would be great if we have an off speaker. So we have 2 speakers left to decide to do that. And now I call on Ricky to close the case for the proposition.
Want to phone a friend?
I don't have any.
It's a useless desk, isn't it?
It always was.
Yeah.
I refuse to use it.
Yeah. You know better. Oh, yeah.
Okay, and ping. Madam Registrar, ladies and gentlemen of the University Philosophical Society, ladies and gentlemen, has it been another year already? I'd like to thank Sheila for her pleasant intro. I'd like to think that there's a great deal of consistency in the night. I'm here again, you didn't win any awards at the CSE Awards again, and you're still not funny. It's mad to think that it's been a year. This time last year, I was living at home with my mum. I didn't have a job, and I hadn't got my bit since Christmas. A year later, I have a job. I think the day after I came here, I started working in an IRA gift shop at the top of O'Connell Street. Our main customers were the intellectually disabled, the elderly, and dissident Republicans. That was the order in which I tolerated them. It is the reverse order of which ones attended the event. Fortunately, I eventually claimed my birthright of having got a 2-1 in Trinity and being in the Phil, and now I work at Web Summit. It's going fine. I have to go to a guy in the Bray Seafront who hypnotizes me into thinking I'm okay with the job, but there's free cereal, so you know. Anyway, I'm going to stop talking about my life because it's really depressing. I'll talk to my hypnotherapist all about it. So, the motion before us tonight, the sole purpose of comedy is laughter. Well, I'd like to think back when I was Reg, the sole purpose of the job was making people laugh. I didn't do any of the other responsibilities of the job. I didn't go to any council meetings. I didn't write the minutes. I showed up and did the jokes, and I left the debate for the first 2 months. I was asked to fill out the register of electors for the elections, and I said to them, if you make me fill out even one name on that sheet, I will add so many of my friends. I will run for president, and I will run this place into the ground. And I still got my mark, thanks. I love being Reg. I really thought it was just about the jokes. There was a real range of jokes. There were nice, light ones, like when we had a debate about philosophy and I said the true meaning of Eros is bubbly chocolate. That's nice. There were mean jokes, like when we had a guest in a wheelchair and I said he was a stand-up guy. That wasn't nice. I also like to do audience interaction. Hey, you there. All right. Anyway, no need to focus on the past, except for the fact that I was very popular in secondary school. So, I came here, I did drama, and we actually studied comedy. It was a 6-week module. I didn't do very well. I didn't show up a lot. I used to just go out partying all the time doing drugs, so I couldn't get up at 9 a.m. That's not an endorsement for drugs. I would never do that. The only thing I will say is that they don't call it ecstasy because it's shit. But we learned that there's a lot of different types of things that make us laugh. There's no one true reason why we do jokes. There's different theories behind it. One of them would be superiority theory. That's, say, people laughing at someone who falls over, or like schoolyard bullying. So I'd written down, make really sharp, cutting remark about someone in the debate, but I turned my page upside down while the debate was on, so I didn't fill in the blank. So, hey everyone, look at Con. He's a frigid. Simple. We have what Catherine called minor deviations, when you break away from an accepted norm. For example, like if you were to say, penis! There you go, it's not the best. Freud argued that jokes were for sexual release. That doesn't work. And there's another one called incongruity theory. So that's the idea, and it was explained to me by a former register, Brian O'Byrne, when he was trying to teach me how to be a reg and make jokes. He's like, Ricky, you need to take people down a path, and just when they think they see the end of the path, you take them down another path. That causes the brain to be surprised, and laughter is a reward our brain gives us for surprise. So I wanted to give you my best example of a joke of incongruity, but I don't know one. There it is. Right. So now, yay, it worked. All right, so normally my theory with the debate is I've explained my speech theory before. It's about making lots of jokes and then in the last minute trying to say something quite rousing and moving that gets to people's souls and makes them come along my side. The theory is called I Wink So Hard I Cry. But I haven't put enough preparation into this, so I'm going to just make a few cheap jokes about everyone else who spoke and then sit down. Hey, I haven't seen this many older men around young women since I stopped living in Southeast Asia. Anyway. Our first speaker on proposition was Mr. Chris Wood, who's delightful and affable. You say that the last time you was here was 55 years ago, but since you're in the 108th session and now in the 331st, I'd like to know when the great leap forward came. That glorious 100 years of presidency where we got loads of bicycles and radios. I think you're right, the society has changed a lot. For example, women are allowed to sit in the chair. That's a nice step up. You said that PC is not comedy. No, it's a handy tool for writing screenplays and listening to music. And then you said satire is not comedy. I disagree. I thought we made loads of great jokes when I was in charge of the Piranha. I thought it was hilarious when we called that guy with alopecia Voldemort. You told us that Hitler won the world over with laughter. Yes, I do remember situation, office space comedies swarming the fields of Poland and breaking the will of the French. Great. Catherine, you said you would deliver a load of rubbish. It's not true, just quite a lot. You said that you are more likely to watch SNL than read the Washington Post. Maybe you just have awful taste. And you said that comedy reaffirms biases. It certainly reaffirms mine that I'm funny and that I was very popular in secondary school. Irene, you say that political comedy does make you think about politics. Yeah, your speech didn't make me think about it very much. Brian, you got up and said 7 minutes doesn't feel like very long. It really did. I assumed when you came to dinner in a collar that you were a Catholic priest, and I thought that I could get at least some sort of cheap shot of moral high ground over you. But I can't, obviously, because you're Protestant, so I'll just say, cheers for the famine, mate. Fair play, though, for getting all that tail when you were in college, you legend. I suppose the only way to sum it up for talking to the priest is to try do a sort of like priest moment. So I'll go to like the side of the altar. I think Brian's speech reminded me a bit of Jesus. I know historically that it happened, but it was by no means at all miraculous. So, what have I done here tonight? I told you what I was going to say. I said it, and now it is done. Thank you.
On. Okay.
You want to phone a friend too?
I have a few. Ladies and gentlemen of the University Philosophical Society and the reanimated corpses of the former members of the Phil who are here tonight, comedy's sole purpose can't be laughter. Because no one ever laughs at my jokes. The first part of that sentence was comedy's sole purpose can't be laughter, but you talked over it. But whatever, that's fine. Let's just get this over with. I'm going to be honest with you all tonight. I'm still not entirely sure what comedy is, and I was a bit worried about that, but after those speeches so far, it's pretty clear no one else here knows what it is either. That was a pre-planned joke. I actually haven't been listening to a word anyone's been saying. That was also a pre-planned joke. You're all great. I was asking people on council earlier tonight, like, what exactly is comedy? Is it that thing Sheila does during her minutes on Thursday nights? And everyone was like, kinda. God, love her. Sheila's a gorgeous looking girl, but she's about as funny as shite on a stick. In fairness to her though, I myself actually only know one joke. I only ever say this one joke. That's the phrase, bye boys, in a funny voice like this. It says, bye boys. The joke doesn't mean anything, and I can't remember the context for it, but if being in the Phil has taught me anything, it's that if you say the same thing over and over again enough times, it eventually starts to become funny. Unless you're Hugh Fitzgibbon, and then when you say the same thing over and over again, it just becomes uncomfortably sexual. I wrote that thinking Hugh Fitzgibbon was going to be here tonight, but he's not, which is unusual because normally he thrives. I thought he would be speaking, but he's not, but which is unusual because normally he thrives on forcing us all to listen to him. It's Hugh Fitzgibbon. Thanks. But to get serious for a minute, comedy is something I'm extremely passionate about, which is ironic because I'm not really that funny. It can feel intimidating when you're a woman to attempt to be funny publicly because of the patriarchy and stuff, but I keep seeing more and more of people I know who are women doing it, which is amazing. Sheila has been the first female registrar of the Phil in many years, and she hasn't messed it up too much. And actually my own personal comedy hero is a woman. Her name's Ayn Rand, and she's a real up-and-comer. You should check her out. She's a true comedy legend. But back to the debate. So personally, when it comes to things, I'm not always that good at dealing with them, and comedy is definitely a way to cope with that, in case that wasn't kind of abundantly clear already. It definitely does have a purpose beyond just providing people with entertainment. And actually, if comedy's only purpose is laughter, I'm fine with that, because laughter is so much more than just a response to hearing a funny joke, or it would be if anyone ever actually laughed at my jokes. So I want to talk to you guys about three main things for this debate. First of all, what is all this humor business and what does it mean? And then I want to talk about why is this comedy shit so important anyway? And finally, because I'm afraid those two topics won't be jokey enough for this debate, I want to talk to you all about my grandmother's death. I'm trying to appeal to the older demographic here, so I don't really know. I guess death is kind of relevant. I really don't know. Okay, so it's going to be difficult to not make the speech the equivalent to explaining why a joke is funny, which is kind of what Catherine did, and Arian, but you guys are great. I love you guys. So humor itself is a very loosely formed idea. Mostly it's a social expression that's used to create and strengthen bonds. Trust me on this one, I did sociology for a year. In many ways, when we laugh at a joke, it's this uncontrollable expression of relief. We feel relief when someone says something shady that we don't have to say ourselves. It's how we ease tensions and make pals. Comedy is important because it helps us make sense of the world. It's how our brains deal with conflicting information that we might struggle to understand otherwise. This is all just in a really elaborate way of saying I ran out of jokes to say for the middle of this speech and decided to haphazardly Google a bunch of facts instead. But I think at this stage I've really hammered home the point that comedy isn't something to be laughed at. Good. Okay. So stay with me now, because I literally could not think of any good jokes for this next section, so it's all just absolutely banal opinions. So the last time I ever spoke to my maternal grandmother, I played a Macklemore song on the ukulele for her over FaceTime. She died that very moment. No, she actually died a few days later from complications arising from pneumonia brought on by she had Parkinson's, dementia. It was awful. It's a terribly long illness. Okay, so we flew over to Boston a few days later that week for her funeral, and it was a really, difficult thing to do, but my family in America is batshit. My cousin Kerry was sending selfies from our nana's wake to her friend with benefits via Snapchat and kept showing me pictures from his Facebook where he was holding a rifle in one hand and a dead raccoon in the other, and she said he had a great personality. So flying over to Boston for my nana's funeral was one of the most difficult things I've ever had to do in my life, especially because our flight was delayed by 7 hours and I couldn't get my phone to connect to the Wi-Fi at the fucking airport. And so every summer we used to go to Boston and stay with her, and I couldn't wrap my head around the fact that that would never happen again. And I couldn't comprehend that for the first time ever. We weren't going to Boston for a happy holiday. We stayed at my uncle's house the first night, and everyone was tired and sad, and my phone's Wi-Fi still wouldn't work, but we started sorting through old photographs and laughing and making jokes. It was bizarrely cathartic to make fun of bad haircuts and shoe decisions and stuff, because I exclusively wore Crocs for the entire summer of 2006. So because my nana had been the glue holding our family together, none of us really knew that night what was supposed to come ahead. Days and weeks and months and years stretched out ahead of us interminably, and I think all of us felt like unmoored boats in a vast, endless sea. But then, like a phoenix rising from the ashes, a thought popped into my head. It was an idea for a joke. "Hey guys," I said to my grieving family, if alive people have to work to earn a living, do you guys think ghosts have to work to earn a deading? And everyone laughed. And in that laughter, there was something else. In that laughter was a suggestion that things would eventually be all right again. And I think that's basically the whole point of this debate. What?
He was giving you a really nice compliment. He said you're a naturally very good speaker.
Oh.
I'd like to thank Liz and indeed all our speakers for a really funny debate. So we'll give one more clap for our and now we have just two floor speeches. So first, they're going to be 3 minutes in length, and there's going to be a crystal bell at the end to tell you when you're done. There's not much time on you. So Jamie is going to give a speech for the proposition. So Jamie to the floor.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. It's an honour and a privilege to speak before the University Philosophical Society. And indeed, in the motion that this House believes the sole purpose of comedy is laughter, it's clear that some things we said on proposition and some things we said on opposition as well. What some of those things are, I'm not entirely sure because I arrived late, but I want to borrow some inspiration from an honorary member, Mr. David Byrne, who in an honorary members debate a number of years ago said that it's time for the thing that we've all been waiting for, and that is some good old grassroots personal attacks. And indeed, within this very audience, I decided to say, I'll give a floor speech. I'll get up, I'll look around the audience for familiar faces, and then I'm going to just start telling funny and embarrassing stories about them. And unfortunately, I don't see many familiar faces here. Oh, what's this? Ricky McCormick is sitting right in front of me. Oh, well, I think it's time to get going. I think it's time to tell a story from before even I was in college, from when Ricky McCormick was an innocent fresher, if you can believe it. And indeed, his first involvement in debating was with one Mr. Fieke van Verbruggen, an old friend of his from school. And they decided to go on the SOAS debating competition trip over to London in October. The Phil gets pissed, everyone else doesn't get quite so pissed, but the Phil does, so that's the important thing. And naturally, some people get more pissed than others. So, cue at the final, a HIS team is in the final, and the debate goes on, yada, yada, yada. But around 2/3 way through the debate, there's an English debater who's taken the motion very, very seriously. It's about moral spectra and moral theories and stuff like that. He's saying the proposition is awful because in their world, you're going to have this moral system where no one aspires to be good. Why not just go out and actually abuse children if that's the case? And on that note, Ricky just goes, on that point, sir. To which the English debater says, sit down and piss off, you drunken Irish twat. And indeed, and I will take you in just a moment, Ricky. And indeed, as that goes on, the next speech into it, the chair of the debate has to get up and physically remove Ricky from the play's building because he's being so disruptive. And for some reason, the SOAS Debating Society still has not taken down the video of that night. Go ahead, Ricky.
Yeah, that wasn't my proudest moment, but I was very popular in the second.
there we have it, ladies and gentlemen. A bit of Machiavellian philosophy of the ends justify the means. And indeed, going on to when I was in first year in the Phil, this is very much when Ricky was in some of his prime form, as it were, when it comes to antics and nights out. Now, I didn't go along to the Cork IV when I was in first year, but I am told some other interesting stories from that. I am told a few variations of Ricky woke up drunk on a couch with his underwear on the outside of his trousers, and that Ricky also managed to piss himself. Hopefully wasn't both in one competition. But indeed, I'm sure Ricky himself would accept that this is something which has happened many, many times. And I will take it, go ahead, because I'm running out of things to say.
You're thinking of in third year after the maidens final, when I did piss myself on my own couch, where I have the right to pee myself.
I've forgotten about that. Thanks for telling me that you pissed yourself more than once. But indeed, to summarise all of this and what was inevitably a great intellectual outpouring, I would say that when it comes to comedy, if it can't make you laugh, what can it do? If indeed you're able to tell a joke and no one laughs, I'd venture it's not a very funny joke. So, due to that very circular reasoning, I would say that comedy, Ricky is comedy. Ricky was intended to make you laugh. Therefore, comedy is intended to make you laugh. I propose.
Thank you, Jamie, for that speech that I'm not sure we wanted to be enlightened about. I don't think we did anyway. And now I'm going to call our final speaker of the evening, and Jane, to do a floor speech for the opposition. We'll give you a little ding at 30 seconds to go, so that you...
All right, cool. Members of this honourable society, reanimated clouds of dust that were scooped up into a dustpan and brush and brought to the room. Hi, Jamie. What's the buzz? I was once called the rising star of comedy, and it was a while ago now, but I'm still going to go on it. So essentially, I have the most qualifications to talk about what is funny out of anyone here. Apart from Sheila, but she's not in the debate. So essentially, yeah, I mean, comedy does make you laugh, but acting like the sole point of comedy is laughter is really disingenuous on the behalf of the jokester. When people tell jokes, when I tell jokes, for example, I'm not doing it just to make you laugh. That suggests that I'm being nice, that I want you to have a good time, and that's not necessarily the case. Basically, I have one point, and it's called Please Like Me. So, I hope it's going well. So essentially, when I tell a joke, I don't care about whether or not you're enjoying yourself. I care about whether or not I'm endearing myself to you. And it turns out that if you just kind of tell people that you're really anxious and you want them to like you, it works. So there we are. And also, you know, on kind of like a greater scale, we've gotten some stuff from Op about how the point of comedy is to make everyone woke. So I would kind of say that it's not that deep, but the point of comedy is to sort of establish a common ground, establish a sort of community. And that happens regardless of whether your jokes are particularly woke or not. If you're, you know, a racist and you make a racist joke, that's you bonding with the other racist in the building. No, I'm not even going to say anyone's name, that would be too easy. When you're, you know, making any jokes at the expense of, you know, the old people, you're kind of being like, haha, I'm young, I have all my original bones. And, you know, that's me relating to most of the room. And, you know, when I kind of come in here and I go, I know men who wear dog collars as well, that's me kind of being gas and suggesting that being a member of the clergy is in any way comparable to being a member of the pub community. And that's ridiculous, so that's pretty good. When, who is it, Jengle, stood up and said to Catherine Kelly his joke about the pirates, stood up and said his joke about the pirates. Catherine did, make the attempt to kind of make it into this was an enlightening and great thing. Obviously, that's not necessarily the case. We all know that C is a letter of the alphabet. We all knew that before we got here. We go to Trinity. We're very clever. Community. But when he did do that, he was establishing, he was trying to be like, look, that's just something that made you laugh, so that's a point for our side. But when he did that, he was trying to get all of you guys to agree with him and be a community, which actually, in a reverse double switcheroo, made it into a point for our side. So there was the bell. There we have it.
But thank you for making this a really wonderful evening. We're going to put it to a vote now, the motion. So it says please accommodate sole purposes laughter. Would everybody in favour please say aye? Aye. And